Hello and welcome to Warframe. My name's Todd, also known as Major Mech, and this is, of course, Warframe. Last time we started the quest once a week, and we made it a good amount of the way through it, and showed off the Void Trader as well. Void Trader's still here, pretty much doing this right after I did the previous part. I did want to take a look at the alert. Tellurium is a good thing to get if you can get it. It's a rare resource similar to Nitane or Nitane, or however you pronounce that. If you can get that, it's good to have. Oh, we could just head straight into the quest. I don't think there's anything else we need to do. Nothing really we need to talk about. We'll probably think about what kind of weapons we want and whatnot while we're maybe doing the Howl of the Kubrow quest. But for now, let's just continue with Once Awake. That is, if we even get to the Howl of the Kubrow quest before we're finished here. Let's see. Coming in.
We are going to attempt to use a cascade bomb to destroy all traces of infested here. The bomb will take time to arm. Protect it until it's ready for detonation.
And we will do just that. So this works pretty much like a basic defense mission. This map is problematic. The infested tend to melee things. They are melee heavy enemies, just like zombies almost. They will want to run up and punch things. Usually there would be a thing here in the middle preventing you from running through it, but I think they took that out just to give players a better chance. And you can see that the molten impact and the heat damage on the sword that we got does a number on these infested. There is, of course, a huge thing in Warframe about, you know, what enemies are weak to what types of damage. So always pay attention to that.
These creatures appear to be mindless monsters, but they know we're up to something, and they're trying to stop it.
So it should be heavily apparent that if you're going into a mission, you know what you're going to fight. If you have the time, you feel like it, it's always worth it to change your damage type to fit the enemy that you're fighting. But foregoing that, there are a couple damage types which, if we can get enough elemental mods later on, are pretty reliably good, regardless of what type of enemy you're fighting. Which pretty much was found out by when you're dealing with the corrupted. Lots of problems arise there because the enemy types are all from the different factions. So somebody had to find out what was kind of best overall. That seems to be like a running theme in pretty much any game you play. Is there's always a best. There's always a what they refer to as a meta. But you know, you don't have to play by that. If you're not playing at a level that requires it, there's no reason to worry about it. But if you are having problems and you're trying to get better at the game, sometimes it's best to look at what the best players do and kind of imitate. You know, that's like gaming 101, though. Pretty sure I don't have to tell most of the people who are playing Warframe about that. And I think it reminds me of...
As the bomb goes off, a wave of void energy will tear through the complex, ripping the life force from all organic matter, but leaving the structure intact. It's our only chance to stop this scourge before it starts.
Well, let's hope that we're not caught in that blast. But the story I was thinking of just a minute ago, talking about kind of the origins of video games, reminds me a lot of just the times when I used to play some of the older games on the Nintendo 64 with my brother, and we would always play together. And even back in those days, I was always trying to help him out, even though he's my older brother. He seemed to always be better at games than I was, but I always learned the tips and tricks quite quickly. When we started to get into things like some of the later games, like on the PlayStation and whatnot, with like Grand Theft Auto, I would always be the guy with the cheat book. Always gotta have one of those. Just a piece of paper or entire books sometimes full of cheat codes and things like that. It's always fun to think about those days because much simpler time in gaming when not a whole lot of people even knew what gaming really was. I feel kind of bad, honestly, nowadays when I think about my brother and those days, just because I know he kind of went on with his life and he doesn't really play video games anymore. But I'll always remember the times I had fondly. Criminies. So we still got 3 waves to go. We're handling these guys pretty good. Not really a whole lot here that's going to be a major threat to us. Let's see. Do want to make sure that you keep this bomb protected. Unlike us, the defense objectives in these missions will regenerate health over time. So if you can make sure to preserve that shield, even if it's lost a bit of health, it'll gain that health back over time. Massively useful to know in later missions when you may be losing a lot of health for your defense objectives. I'm pretty sure I've talked about these 2 Ancients' abilities enough times that should be pretty self-explanatory what they do. Pretty much target them right away if you're able to, though.
You just have to hold out a little bit longer.
These smaller enemies are relatively easy to deal with just by yourself. When in groups, it's much better to target the Ancients or any large enemy that may take longer to kill. That will help you deal with, waves of enemies much quicker. At least from my experiences, it would. I don't tend to run any weapon that doesn't really focus on making sure you can take down the biggest guy in the room in a couple shots. Just because I find that strategy to be the most effective. The wonderful thing about Warframe is just how many different combinations, though, that you can kind of accomplish. And I'm sure there are many builds and styles of play that I've never even seen before, so if you don't like the way I do it, find your own way. There's many different ways to make it work. I think the only time I really consider it a problem is when those, methods don't work or fail. In Warframe, though, the failure is sometimes one of the greatest learning tools, especially for new Warframes and weapons. Some things can be expected in Warframe, some things are just so off the wall that it's impossible to understand what just happened without a little bit of explanation at the very least. So, if you're out there and you're trying something new and you're getting a lot of guff for it, don't worry about it. Playing the game is really all about just how you want to do it. Have I said something like that before? I feel like I've said something like that before. I was just thinking back to it and scratching my head a little.
The bomb is armed. I'm extracting
and there we go.
it now. Good job, Tenno.
So, the Lotus pulls us out, and we got Sentinel Professional, I think that was? Sentinel something as an achievement. They should put that on top of the mission's summary screen so you can see it if you get one. Let's see. Oh. Alright, so we got a message from the Lotus, but it was intercepted. And this is from Dr. Tangus to the Queens. The Grineer Society is actually led not by kings or generals, but by queens. And we also got another message from the Lotus talking more about the infestation, and you can of course pause this if you want to read it yourself. But we also got a heat-stored blueprint. Now, don't really need that. Oh, quest complete. Alright, so we've completed Once Awake. So, now that we've done that, you can replay the quest if you so choose. You will not get quest completion, quest completion rewards if you repeat quests multiple times. So, don't think that you can just farm those rewards and get them infinitely. And that's especially critical later on when you start getting important pieces of gear from the quests. You cannot repeat them for those rewards, so don't throw them away. But we did get the heat sword blueprint. We already have a heat sword, thankfully, from the code-free sword, though, so we don't even need to worry about that weapon. The heat sword, though, is a very good weapon for dealing with the infestation, just because it does heat damage. Alright, so I've still got the Once Awake quest readout, so I just had a readout for it. Okay. So effectively, now that we've completed that, we can start looking towards Mars, and we have to complete Suse on Mercury. Okay. So that shouldn't be too difficult. We will start the Howl of the Kubrow quest, and then we will start working our way towards Suse. Again, forgive me if I'm pronouncing these names wrong.
Stand by while I analyze the intelligence profiles of the Grenier. Error, not
just a
number.
dumb, ignorant
Did the
American.
operator enjoy this
And
witticism?
I was just checking my timer to make sure that we were okay there. We're still doing just fine. Let's see. Oh, quests, right. Howl of the Kubrow. Let's go. So, every great Tenno has a Kubrow by their side. So let's try and get ours.
So the Corpus have recovered an incubator segment. This is an excellent opportunity. Go to Ilara and recover the incubator segment. Every Tenno deserves to have a Kubrow by their side.
And we will work towards getting our own Kubrow. So, Kubrow are one of the other types of pets that you can get. And the last one, which I will talk about here just slightly, because we won't see any mention of them till quite later, is the Kavats, which are effectively cats. Kubrows, on the other hand, are the dogs of the future dogs, space dogs. They're very good pets. They replace your Sentinel in your companion slot if you so choose to use one, so understand that if you don't have a Sentinel, you lose some of the benefits from that, but you do gain the benefits of the Kubrow. That's enough talking about it for now, I think. Wait, we have an inbox message. What is that from? Oh, Freud Beck. Alright. So there's effectively the message. Freud Beck is a corpus.
An incubator segment. You want to turn me into a petting zoo? Ordis is happy to assist the operator restoring ship functionality.
He's a corpus businessman that we'll kind of talk with later on. As you can see, Ordis, that is. Ordis is not a big fan of Kubrows. Thinks they're dirty, from what I understand. Regardless, we're gonna work towards trying to get all the parts of this quest completed. Though it will probably take us some time from what I remember. And we probably won't be able to complete it in this episode. But we'll give it a good shot. I always get bothered by that cinematic just because it flies into the ship, like through it. Kind of clipping through it.
Your job
Bothers
is to
me.
distract the enemy while a fellow Tenno operative raids the ship for much-needed supplies. Make your presence known.
I believe I've shown off the corpus hacking before, but
Life
effectively...
support has been cut off. They're trying to choke you out. Hold on. I'm sending auxiliary life support. I've delivered a life support capsule to the area. Activating it will buy you more time.
Effectively, the hacking program for Corpus is just to make all the lines connect. Not super complicated, but it can get very difficult later on, and it does have a time limit, so be quick about it. This type of mission I don't think we've run into before. This is a survival mission, actually. I don't know if we ran into the previous missions before. I'm pretty sure we did, especially the spy mission in the Once Awake quest, but
For personal life support modules dropped by fallen enemies.
effectively the Lotus is telling us pretty much everything we need to know about survival. It's all about killing enemies as fast as you're able to, so bring out your best weapons when you're dealing in survival. Any warframes or abilities that help you get more items can also help in survival.
Capsule.
So in survival, this is the one time where it's best to truly destroy all containers. And even opening lockers is great because you have the chance to, oh, an Iatan star. So I will talk about this when I get back to the ship, but for now, because we're doing survival, I'll just pick it up. I don't know if I had the chance to talk about this before. I think I might have gotten one before. But we're going to focus on survival. So in survival, the enemies will drop the life support containers. And the Lotus will also, Lotus or whoever may be orchestrating the mission, that is, will teleport in, I suppose you could say, more life support containers, which will provide you with life support. In the upper left of the screen, you can see that I have a bar, a percentage ticking downwards. As the time goes on, that bar will tick down, and we only have so much air left, effectively. When the percentage of that bar, the circular bar in the upper left, goes to 0, we will start taking damage and eventually die. I believe sometimes it will even just fail the mission automatically, which is extremely unfortunate. The major thing being is that you must get enough life support canisters from the enemies, or be able to access the life support capsules from the teleportation that Lotus does. This sort of mission was very perplexing to me in the beginning of the game, and if you're not able to handle this survival right off the bat, don't be surprised. It's something that you get used to. Again, it's mainly just all about killing as many enemies and opening as many containers as possible just to try and get as much loot, effectively. Survival's also great for actually trying to get items for that reason as well.
Life support capsule is now available.
Because everyone in the mission will be focused on trying to get as much stuff as possible to survive. There is one particular Warframe that's very well suited to survival missions, and that's Necros. He has an ability that allows drops to be gotten effectively twice from enemies, which makes him probably the best Warframe for survival, but he's a Warframe that you cannot get right off the bat easily unless you have enough platinum to buy him. And we're not going to worry about that right now, but we are going to worry about the life support capsules. Effectively, my rule of thumb is activate life support at about 20%, or maybe a little bit higher, and when doing so, go up to, at the very minimum, 70%. That way you can keep killing effectively for another good couple minutes. This sort of mission should be possible to survive just based on using the capsules that the Lotus teleports into you, in for you, that is. So you don't necessarily have to kill enemies to be effective, but keeping your bar up without killing enemies is much more difficult.
I've delivered another life support capsule,
as there is a bare minimum time limit. And I don't know if that the amount of time it ticks down in is more difficult over time, but I do know that survivals do ramp up over time to become more difficult as the enemies level up over time. So if you don't have to stay in a survival for long, the best thing to do is get it done as quickly as possible by just using capsules and maybe containers, loot containers, that is. I suppose you can consider enemies loot containers if you really wanted to, though. But they tend to take a couple more hits than your average loot container. My major suggestion, though, especially for this first one, this first survival, if you've never done them before, is definitely just stay near the canisters. Don't use them right away. Especially don't use them if you're at 100% life support. But don't be afraid to use them if you are below 100% life support. Just understand that they are between you and failure, though. And pretty much the only thing sometimes between you and failure. We are lucky. I remember this being quite difficult for many different reasons, but I think the main one being that my Warframe at the time was not super effective at killing enemies, making this quite a pain in the butt. Because, as you'll kind of notice, most quests Don't put you into a public match even if you are selected for public. They tend to be a solo-only event. Usually. Not always. But usually they tend to be solo-only, so these missions, if you're not ready for them or by yourself, then you're going to have a bad time. So make sure you're ready beforehand. Oh, I appear to be out of energy. That's not great. So we got 3 minutes still, and we only have 1 canister left. My hope is that we can get some energy at some point and be able to deal with these enemies. I'd really like to deal with these shield ospreys, but they've got an annoying habit to move around. There we go. We dealt with one of them. Oh, we are
Life support incoming.
out of shields. Okay. So remember, of course, your health doesn't regenerate unless you use your healing items. And it's not super great to do that. The shield ospreys, I don't know if I've talked about these before. I think I have. Effectively, they just shield enemies around them. And they move around in the most annoying of patterns. I really don't like it. And in survival missions, they make the missions much more difficult.
30-second warning.
So Lotus's 30-second warning is pretty much a death sentence if you don't have any more capsules left.
Life support activated.
So make sure to use them very sparingly if that wasn't already apparent. Once you hit 100% life support, as I stated before, if you use a life support capsule, it will do nothing. It will effectively not increase your bar anymore. It'll just keep it at 100% for about the same amount of time it would take to start draining normally. So do not use them if you're at 100%. It is not worth it in any way. With frames like Excalibur and Volt and potentially even Meg, just because of the buff that she got a while back, this sort of mission isn't super difficult. When I was doing this mission, the reason I found it quite difficult is because I actually had a Loki frame as my first frame. I started playing Warframe quite a while back,
Life support on
and
the way.
at one point, instead of
30 seconds
the
left.
frames that you have now, oh, we got an achievement. You could actually pick Loki as one of your
Support has been
frame,
replenished.
as one of the starting frames. Now, that wasn't a bad choice to do it, but overall, his combat capabilities are not fantastic. He's much better for later parts of the game, and I didn't know that at the time of choosing him,
Additional life support has
which
arrived.
was problematic in missions like Survival. Loki's just really not the best frame for Survival. Honestly, it's much better to have someone else. Either a frame that can kill very good, or a frame that can get you more loot. Criminies, we are just on fire here, literally. I think I'm doing alright here. I'm holding them off. We only got 25 seconds left. I'm going to use my last capsule because I know we don't have a lot of time left.
Life support has been replenished.
Hopefully that will give us enough time to last past the time limit, which then we will immediately rush to the extraction as fast as we can. One funny thing about Survival is if you do reach the extraction in a party, and you're the only one there, but time is ticking down,
Needed. Extraction is ready.
let's go.
The raid is off to a successful start.
So we could keep going. Survival missions are endless missions, similar to defense missions, but I don't see any reason to. And as I was saying, if you reach the end of a survival mission by yourself in a group, you will pause effectively the end of the survival mission until everyone arrives near the end, just by standing in the little extraction zone there. So it's very useful to get to the end if you think, nobody's really close and your time is ticking down. Just stand in the extraction zone, and it'll give everybody enough time to get to the end. In the very rare situation that may happen. It's also
Joy. An incubator. The only segment Ordis is glad those savages looted. I would be happy to help you install it. Ordis awaits incubator segment installation, operator. No need to rush.
our good old Ordis being very bipolar. but effectively, just standing in the end of the survival excavation or extraction at the survival missions will pause effectively the life support. So you don't have to worry about the mission failing if you're standing in extraction. And we will install this.
Good. Now you just need a Kubrow egg to start the process. Feral Kubrow dens on Earth would be a good place to start looking.
And we can start looking for a feral Kubrow den on Earth. We've seen them previously, where the feral Kubrows come out of. We will have to destroy them to find an egg. But we are completely out of time, and I would say that that would finish our episode for now. Next time we will continue Howl of the Kubrow, and probably finish it out, and then we will keep trying to work towards getting the star map unlocked and completing more quests. But until then, goodbye.